Welcome to One Accord, a twice-weekly podcast presented by the Houston Chamber Choir. I'm arts and culture expert St. John Flynn. Each Friday on Behind the Music, I'll offer you a glimpse into the personalities and outside musical influences of the choral musicians and collaborators who have worked with the Houston Chamber Choir. Welcome to One Accord, Behind the Music, the very first of a new series of Friday podcasts. Today, we kick off the series with the man whose vision and passion gave birth to the Grammy-winning Houston Chamber Choir. That's founder and artistic director, Robert Simpson. Bob, thank you very much for being here.
St. John, thank you for hosting this new endeavor.
Let me start by acknowledging where we are in time and ask you and your family, everybody is safe and sound during the pandemic?
We are. Our families are scattered all over the country and all over the world, from Atlanta to Seattle to Hong Kong, and everybody is doing well, thanks.
Good. And I should mention, for those who don't know, that your wife, Mariana, is also an integral part of the Chamber Choir as well. So you have a professional collaboration as well as a romantic collaboration, shall we say?
We do, yes.
Let me begin by saying congratulations on the Houston Chamber Choir winning that Grammy. That is a tremendous, tremendous achievement, and you must be incredibly proud.
I am proud. I'm proud and I'm humbled, and as I said in Los Angeles, I share this award with each of the singers, not just those who made the recording, but all of those who have sung with us over the years, who brought us to the point that we were able to achieve a Grammy. And the supporters and the board and the staff who have all supported us have made this a real group win. And I'm thrilled for us, I'm thrilled for Houston, and it was a thrill that will never get old.
Was it something that you dreamed of, or was it something that really never crossed your mind?
Well, it never crossed my mind when we were starting this project. The Duraflay Requiem and the other pieces by Duraflay that we performed were going to be the opening concert of our 2017-2018 season. But I realized shortly after we started to rehearse that this music suited us so perfectly. And then we got into the organ hall at Rice, and the room and Ken Cowan and the organ all just meld. I thought something very, very special is happening. But we were not prepared to make a recording at that point. So we had to regather ourselves at the end of the season after we'd put funding together to actually make the recording. And then once the recording with Blanton Osbaugh and Sound Mirror in Boston was made, and their multi-Grammy winning team, then I thought, well, let's just put our hat in the ring and see what happens. And so we clearly were thinking about a Grammy, but not necessarily more than a nomination that first time. And when we were nominated, we just were over the moon. And then one thing led to another, and we went to Los Angeles, a group of us, Mariana and I, and several members of the choir, and our staff, and we just waited to see what happened. And then at the moment that the Grammy was announced, I was completely spaced out. I didn't react when I first heard, because there had been a certain order that they had announced the nominees. And instead of saying the conductor's name first, which they had done with the nominees, they announced the piece or the CD first. And so I was listening for something that started with a R, as in Robert Simpson, and it was
right,
as in Duraflay. And so I sat still for a second until I heard Mariana shriek next to me.
Well, it must have been an incredible moment in your life. And, I don't think anybody deserves that Grammy more so than you. You have created the Houston Chamber Choir, and you lead it, and you have brought it to the zenith of choral ensembles. And it's wonderful to see that you have something tangible to show for that.
Well, thank you. At the time, just the night before the ceremony, I was having a drink with Blanton Osbaugh, and he has won many Grammys. In fact, he needs to add a room to his house to house them all. And I was asking, well, so how does it feel? And he said, my advice to anyone who wins a Grammy is wear it lightly. It is a snapshot, it's a moment in time, and it's one to be relished. But it was very fitting that when we got back from Los Angeles, it was a Monday, and we went right from the airport to a chamber choir rehearsal. And,
Really?
and that was very symbolic of how I viewed it and how I view it. This is the result of our dedication and hard work and circumstances, some of those beyond our control, that just came together. And so getting back to work and making music and rededicating ourselves to the choral art was really the best finish to that whole weekend I could imagine.
Well, I hazard a guess here that although you won the Grammy for the choral works of Duruflé, that was not the first music that you ever listened to, the music of Duruflé. When you were growing up, what was the music that was played in your home?
Well, I grew up in a musical family. My parents were not professional musicians, but they enjoyed music. And so we had classical music in our house. My dad loved theater organ, and so we had Dick Liebert and George Wright, and we went into New York. I grew up outside New York, and we would go into Manhattan, and the first organ recital I ever attended was by Virgil Fox when he was organist at Riverside Church. I became fascinated with the organ. My paternal grandparents had a home organ, as a matter of fact, and I started to play it, and my love of the organ certainly overwhelmed my first love was the organ. But at home, we would listen to a wide range of things, including Broadway shows. And I think the first time I thought choral music and singing together is something that I really want to know more about is when we went to see Music Man and came home with the cast album. And I heard the Buffalo Bills sing Lida Rose. And I thought, I love those harmonies. I love the way those voices blend together. So it might have been barbershop that was my first taste of beautiful singing.
When you started to get your own music, buy your own music, LPs, 33s and 45s, what was the music that you were buying then?
Well, I made the mistake that I think a lot of people in my generation who wanted to buy records fell into, and that was Columbia Records had a Record of the Month club. And so I think as a sophomore in high school, I enrolled in the Record of the Month club, and records came, guess what, every month. And I had to make a new choice. I remember I checked the box for the Bartók Concerto for Orchestra, but I also got into other things. There was a tenor singer by the name of John Gary, whose music I really enjoyed. And so I listened to classical music and many other things, sometimes after a couple of years, more out of exploration than out of interest. But there are lots of LPs still upstairs in our house from my sojourn into the Columbia Record of the Month Club, and I love it all, and I still love it all.
Did you ever branch out into how should we say, more popular forms of music?
Yeah,
I tell you why I ask. Growing up, my first records were all classical records, and then through a friend, I discovered rock music, and a whole new vista had been opened to me onto the world. Did that ever happen with you?
oh, absolutely. In fact, I did not. I had a very good voice as a boy soprano, and I was in school productions in elementary school and at the church, but my main outlet was the trombone. And so I played instrumental music, and a group of us got together and put together a Dixieland jazz ensemble. And I remember still trying to make Midnight in Moscow swing, as little as I knew about what that might mean. But I loved instrumental music, and of course I'm at the point where the Beatles hit just as I was reaching high school. And so I was overwhelmed by the Beatles. And I wasn't a big fan of all of the music, but certainly I was listening to the radio all the time. And anytime I heard something by the Loving Spoonfuls or by one of the other groups, you know, I still recall and love to hear those and listen to the classic, you know, music of the 60s stations as I'm doing work around the house. So yeah, I think I enjoyed a wide range of music and still really do, from classical to bluegrass to jazz. I have a lot of loves when it comes to music.
And are those loves mirrored in your vinyl collection, shall we say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the, actually speaking of records, one of the records that really changed my life was I was already, had gotten my master's and I was a graduate student in Germany. And I came across a multi-LP set of choral music by a group I did not know. It was called the Swedish Radio Choir, conducted by someone else whose name I didn't know yet, Eric Erickson. And I listened to that recording. A friend suggested I buy it, and that changed my life. I listened to the Swedish Radio Choir, and for the first time, I was 22, 23, I realized that that was the sound that I had been waiting to hear. And from that point to this, so much of my ear and so much of my taste has been influenced by the singing of that wonderful group under the direction of Eric Erickson, the great Swedish choral conductor.
What was it about that recording that really spoke to you? Was it the harmonies? Was it the music? Was it the arrangement? What was it?
Well, first of all, it's called Five Centuries of European Choral Music. And so there was a wide range of repertoire. And it showed me that one ensemble could, in fact, range from Renaissance music to contemporary music, which the Swedish choir was particularly noted for. And that really interested me because I spent a lot of time practicing the organ, and Baroque music is something that's very dear to me. But I wanted to do more than Baroque music. And this showed me the way for a choir to change its sound to match the various periods. The other thing that fascinated me about the Swedish Radio Choir sound was how intense but relaxed it was. I'd heard lots of choral singing that sounded as if it was being done with effort. And that the excitement was being generated out of a kind of a quality of muscularity that didn't necessarily make the music, it didn't communicate itself to me quite as naturally as this sense of natural flow of energy that the Swedish Radio Choir created, and that the choirs and the Scandinavian choirs is kind of their signature. So that is something else that has become something important to me, that the choral music must be vital and it must be expressive and it's got to be intense, but it also must have a sense of naturalness and inevitability. And that's one of the things that I have been able to enjoy most about how the Houston Chamber Choir sings its music. It feels to me, as I listen to recordings and as I'm even in rehearsals, that there is something very organic and natural and beautifully flowing about their music.
It sounds like your entry into music was through the organ. Mm-hmm. You then sort of, you never left the organ behind, obviously, but when you discovered choral music, didn't that also mean that you would have to learn how to conduct?
Absolutely. And that came at the point in time when actually all of my formal training had been concluded. And so I had wanted to be a church musician even as a child. I knew I wanted to grow up to be an organist, but an organist whose primary focus was on music for the church. And I still have a great thrill of being at Christ Church Cathedral and being canon for music and working with the wonderful choirs there and a superb organist, Daryl Robinson, who is our cathedral organist. But the organ was my entree. I got, after Germany, I came back to the Episcopal Cathedral in Orlando, Florida, and it gave me the opportunity to learn how a choral conductor should approach music, because I really didn't have a clue. So I was great at the organ, and on Wednesdays when people came to rehearsals, I was kind of making it up, and I thought, this is not going to do. So I started to go to workshops and started to study, and at that point there was no internet, so I just went to every workshop I could find, and little by little started to put it together. And what I realized was that as hard as I'd worked to be a great organist, there was something about it that never completely connected. But when I got in front of a choir, got in front of singers, as inexperienced as I was at the time, that was it. I knew this was it. And so from that point, in 1974, I was an organist who conducted. Then somewhere along my tenure, I was lucky enough to go to the Episcopal Cathedral in Atlanta, St. Philip's Cathedral, which had a huge program. By that time, I'd had 5 years in Orlando and kind of knew what I was doing, but that gave me the opportunity to then grow in my 15 years in Atlanta under the influence of Robert Shaw, who was the director of the Atlanta Symphony at the time. That's where I really started to feel as if I was making progress as a choral conductor. And then coming to Houston, I realized that I really wanted to spend more time conducting, and not just the church, but also secular music. And one of my hopes coming to Houston was to form a professional choir. And I spoke about that dream with the dean, Walter Taylor, who hired me, and he was very supportive. And to this day, some of our greatest supporters and cheerleaders come from the congregation of Christ Church Cathedral. And at this point, I am conducting and very seldom play the organ. I still love it and I miss it a little bit, but I realized that that I really was put on this planet. If I was put on this planet for any reason, it was to be a choral conductor. And I have loved the opportunity that Christ Church Cathedral and the Houston Chamber Choir have given me to explore this wonderful art and have such thrilling experiences in sacred and secular music.
This is perhaps a bad question to ask you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you ever feel like I just have to get away from my professional music, the music that I'm preparing for services at the cathedral, or music that I'm preparing for Houston Chamber Choir, and you sit down and you listen to music that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're working on at the moment? Mm-hmm. Sort of non-professional music is how I want to term it. Things that you listen to just for the sheer enjoyment of the music, and not because it's music that you're going to have to present.
Right. That pretty well describes everything about me when it comes to music. Music is my hobby, it's my passion, it's my profession, it's my relaxation, it's my work, it's my stress, it's my release. I like to vary the kinds of music I listen to. I love James Taylor, and you've got a friend. When I'm in the right mood, I can just listen to James Taylor all day long, or I can listen to Earl Scruggs, and as he plays the banjo. But the music that I'm working on, or the music that I'm hoping to work on, planning future seasons, all of that is feeding my soul. And I feel the natural stresses and the worries that I'm not getting to the bottom of the music, or I haven't found the right way to communicate the music to the singers, those stresses and worries are ever present. I don't, very seldom do I come away from a rehearsal without thinking, oh, if only I had thought to do this or that. And then I make a note and try to go about making that happen at the next rehearsal. So it's a preoccupation and something that it lives with me all the time, but it lives with me like a love, not like a must or a do. It's something that I, frankly, right now, am a little beside myself without a musical outlet, and I'm not alone. I think the artistic world right now is coming out of the point of being in stunned shock to a realization that things are changing and need to change, but how are we going to do that? And I have a good friend, Sid Davis at St. Luke's United Methodist Church, who on a Zoom call recently said, okay, we've been bailing long enough. Now it's time to hoist the sail. And I asked Sid on a follow-up call, so how are you hoisting the sail? He said, I'm not sure how to do that. I just know we need to find out how. And so that's where I am right now. And so listening to music, and more than just choral music, but feeling that sense of oneness with the creative spirit is something I'm yearning for and looking for at this point. And it's one that I think as a community, the artistic world and particularly the music world, we will find our way through this. But right now, I'm in a state of mourning a certain amount of what I need to live by at this current moment.
I think one thing that we can be grateful for at this point is that the pandemic is forcing organizations like the Houston Chamber Choir to discover new ways of being, if you like. And this podcast series is something new for the choir that maybe wouldn't have come along had things continued as they were before the COVID-19 pandemic. So there is something positive that is coming out of these dire situations that we find ourselves in.
I agree completely.
I also, talking about things that are going on at the moment in the world and in this country, I know you have worked with the Episcopal Church as one of the people that put together their African American hymnal. And African American choral music is incredibly important to you, isn't it?
It is. And that's Lift Every Voice and Sing is the African American hymnal. And I was quite honored to be asked to be on the editorial board. And I learned an awful lot and enjoyed my entry into the music of the spirit that comes from a tradition other than my own. But what I have come away with from that experience and things similar is that there is a universal voice that we need to embrace. And several of my colleagues on the editorial board reminded me on several occasions that this music is for everyone, for all congregations, and not just some. And by the same token, they would say, and Palestrina is not just for some, it's for everyone. So we speak, our souls have reached out in song through spirituals or choral music throughout the ages. And it is wonderful to be able to embrace each tradition, honor it, understand its origins, understand the significance of the words and the music, but not to feel as if it is foreign or somehow alien to a particular group. And when the chamber choir was sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts about 10, 15 years ago now, for an American Masterworks weekend, I invited Barbara Wesley Baker from Washington, D.C., who is a spiritual expert on spirituals. And she and I put together a program that interlaced Western European music and American spirituals and welcomed the overlap of participation on the part of students and members of the community of the broadest range, all enjoying and learning and feeling enriched by each tradition, all of the traditions simultaneously, and I love that. It's part of what binds us together in the human experience is the fact that our experiences are unique, but they can be shared and they enrich us all.
Do you sing in the shower?
I do. You know, I very seldom sing in the shower or anywhere else for that matter if I'm not studying a score. I find myself hearing things in my head more than anything. I will get something going in my mind, but not necessarily sing or whistle. And I've got a friend, Daryl Robinson, for example, whistles all the time. And I just think that's a wonderful self-expression, but I live in my head that way a little bit.
You've mentioned some of the LPs, the vinyl that you still have. Give us an example of a piece of vinyl that people would be surprised that you own.
Oh, gosh. I have three, I have three small discs that were owned by my father. That's called Pardon My Blooper. And these are unintended mistakes that announcers have made over in the radio days mostly. That my mother actually ordered my father to throw away. And we kind of did a quick sign language and he threw them away into my closet. And so I haven't, so that's probably something that people would not expect that I would have, these unintended indiscretions and twists of words that some of them are classics that I own. Pardon my blooper. Haven't thought about those in years, but they're upstairs. Now, music. You were
in
probably
terms of
more about the music.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay, good. Well, let's leave it at that then.
Yeah. In terms of the music of today, are there any contemporary artists that intrigue you, whose music you may have heard and you think, gosh, there's something there?
Oh, endless. Mm-hmm. One of my pads upstairs is nothing more than a list of composers whose music I don't know yet, but have seen on programs or heard on Spotify. It's endless. And not just choral music, but people who I think are writing extraordinarily beautiful music. But I'm particularly focused in on composers and have been delighted that we've been able to attract several of them to write pieces for us. But Nico Muhly, for example, is a composer I feel very close to. Although we've never met and he doesn't know me, whenever I hear his music, I understand his language. Of course, there are the greats like Arvo Pärt and Julia Wolf. It's just endless. But I'm on a constant search to find the composers whose works I do not yet know, but want to learn. It's a bucket with a hole in it, but I'm trying to fill it as fast as I can.
A little bird told me that you have actually listened to some of the music of Lizzo.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that little bird was right. Absolutely. And so I love music, and I love all the self-expression that I think is coming from the heart.
Perhaps a morbid question, but I think an instructive one, and it's one that I've asked myself. Do you have a list of music that you want played at your funeral?
That is something that really is an important exercise that I have not undertaken yet. But I will, I think it's probably more hymns than anthems or choral music. I love Ye Holy Angels Bright, Darwell's 148th will definitely be in the service. But I think that the music that I am most associated and attached to would not necessarily fit into a funeral, and so it will not be a concert with a with other agendas. I'm making my music now and want to celebrate the music now.
Have you ever sung karaoke in a bar or anywhere?
No, that's not me. No, I do dance like other people are watching, and I can't break I can't break out of myself quite enough. It's something I'm not proud of, but I'm too. I don't know if maybe the polite word is reserved, or maybe the right word is uptight, to just let myself go. So karaoke would not be my thing.
What about Mariana? She strikes me as being somebody who would love to sing karaoke, and probably does.
Every minute of every day. I mean, yeah, no, just that. There you go. No, she'd be up for it any old time, you say.
You've mentioned you have a list of composers whose music you want to check out. Have you ever written music yourself?
I have, but it's been very utilitarian. And I think that I perhaps received a little more, I can't really say encouragement, because people did tell me that they liked what I wrote, but I think more truthfully, I don't have a compulsion. I don't have something that's just bursting out of me. But when I am given a task, early on, there were settings of Psalms, for example, for the services at the St. Luke's Cathedral. And I wrote settings of, well, a good 2/3 of the Psalms. And we still sing, occasionally we'll sing one of them at Christ Church Cathedral. But the true part of it is that it is not such a burning desire that I find time to do it. So that tells me everything I need to know about. I am welcoming the creative spirit of others, and that's where it seems to be for me.
How extensive is your record collection?
You know, it's fairly large. The CDs have been, of course, we stopped collecting them as Spotify and other online services started to make them available. But
Right.
there are bunches and bunches upstairs, and LPs for that matter too. I'm not quite sure where where they should go, but I know my son and my daughter have said, well, they want to take a quick look through them from so that they don't let any of the treasures go. And I just think about those as parts of me that are very meaningful, but probably won't be to anyone else. So they'll find their way into a recycling bin, probably.
Do you have a particular room in the house that houses the collection?
Yes, the study upstairs. That's more or less where I hang out.
Is that the inner sanctum?
Sort of, kind of, yeah.
Yes.
And it's shared. Mariana has hers and I have mine. And we, particularly these days, will see each other at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then in between times, I'll be in my study and she'll be in hers. And we'll compare notes from time to time. But it's amazing how busy we both are. And there are many times when I find myself working many days with longer hours than used to be the case.
Yes, yeah. So you each have a separate study?
We do. We do.
And I assume, and maybe I'm wrong to do this, but you have a piano.
Yes, I have a piano. And that gets played less often just because it will disturb Mariana if I play the piano. So there's a keyboard with a headset upstairs that I'm more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And a very important question. Where do you keep the Grammy?
Right now, the Grammy is safe and sound in the Grammy office, wherever the Grammy office is, Los Angeles. It has not arrived yet.
Oh, really?
And I checked with
So what
Glenn.
is it that...
Yeah, so this is the thing. We got a check of an address, verification of address in early March, saying that the Grammy was on its way. But no sooner had we verified the address than we got another notice saying that our offices have been closed down because of the coronavirus, and we're no longer able to predict when you will receive your Grammy. And I checked with Blanton Osbaugh, our producer, and he had received a Grammy this past season. I said, you know, Blanton, have you received your Grammy yet? He said, nope. And he said he'd gotten the same letter. So we are waiting for the office to reopen. And when it comes, we will have another celebration. It'll be another champagne party for sure.
So have you worked out where it's going to go, where it's going to sit? Is there a special shelf, velvet lined?
Well, here's the sad story. All of the nominees received a gold medallion on a green ribbon. It's very, very beautiful. And that was on the shelf of my office. It is no longer there. And we're not sure how it happened, but it has made me realize that keeping the Grammy in our office may not be the safest thing. So I want to share it with everyone, but for safekeeping, it'll probably be perhaps on the shelf that you see behind me in our house. Not because I want to myself, but because it appears not to be safe in a more public place.
You'll have to have a Grammy warming party.
Absolutely, absolutely.
As you look forward to the future, and you know, we hope that life will get back to some semblance of normality. What do you see lies ahead for the chamber choir?
We want to keep pushing our way into new territories, creating new opportunities and doing new music. I made a list not too long ago of the repertoire of the chamber choir, and with the exception of a couple of Mozart requiems and Brahms requiems, there are very few times that we have repeated pieces over the 25 years. Mm-hmm. And that's because I want to have a new opportunity and have the chamber choir have a new opportunity through continuing to grow our repertoire. And that's what we're going to do. Having won a Grammy, we have achieved a certain amount of recognition. Our profile has exponentially increased. We can no longer say that we're the best kept secret. We're out there. Our major musical magazines have written about us. So I think that the most important thing for us to do is to use this Grammy as a springboard to encourage us to continue to grow, and travel more, record more. I remember a quote, Phil Jackson, famous basketball coach, is famous for having said or said that to win the NBA title takes talent. To win multiple NBA titles takes character. And that's what I think we're building now, is that we're building the mentality and the sense of perspective that will allow us to take the success that we've had and use it as fuel for continued striving to make choral music in the very, very finest way that we possibly can. And I'm so lucky to have the talent of the singers and to be in a town where the talent pool is so great that we in fact can produce this kind of music based with just those singers who live within our community. And
so your love it.
I'm saying that because, and some of our viewers now may not realize that the more common practice for elite American choirs right now is to draw their singers from various parts of the country and to bring them into one location for rehearsals and then performances.
Right.
That the older model, and the one that several of my friends and I continue to find more satisfying, if we're lucky enough to be able to tap the depth of talent that's necessary, is to have people who come together from the same community and rehearse together week in and week out. And that's the model that's worked for us. And again, it's only possible when you live in a major city like Houston.
So your love of music is undimmed.
Undimmed, growing by the second, actually. I feel that, in a lot of respects, I'm more energized and more energetic, more perhaps settled in myself than ever before. And so for me, the future looks very, very exciting. And, there will come a time for me to step down, and I'm anxious for me to leave the chamber choir in a healthy position, so that it can continue on through many, many, many artistic directors to keep bringing great choral music to Houston and the country and the world. But for the moment, my engine is revved, and I'm looking forward to speeding down the road.
Well, look, Bob, congratulations again on winning the Grammy and of raising the Houston Chamber Choir to the heights, to the very perfection of choral music, not just in the US, but around the world. And it's a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, St. John. And again, thank you for being part of us and for helping us launch this new endeavor.
It's my pleasure. And I also want to say a special thanks to all of the Houston Chamber Choir patrons and donors for their continued support. And also thank you to you for joining us.